Hey everyone, welcome to Clickheads. I'm Eddie the Chump, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most impactful rounds in all of Valorant, and that's Pistol Round. So much of a competitive match can be defined by what happens in this very first round of each half, but we feel it's one of the hardest to get right, especially with the weapons and utility available being so limited because of the tiny budget. It is not uncommon for a pistol round win to net you essentially 4 free rounds if you win both sides, and in the long-term view of a match that's actually massive and can absolutely be the difference between winning and losing. One thing that we've noticed is that by and large the community's idea of what to buy on this round can be summed up with Ghost or Bust. And although that might be the right choice for some agents, it isn't actually the best default for everybody. In this video, we're going to go through the options and give you a better way of making your decisions. Yes, the classic is trash at certain things, but in combination with the right utility and tactics, it can be powerful. So let's not waste any time today and get straight into it. Ghost versus classic and armor. Let's begin with a discussion of the two options that players most commonly default back to. Buy a Ghost and some utility, or keep a classic and buy light armor. Valorant pistols are very different to say their counterparts in CS. In that game, there is actually a much bigger gap between the Glock and the USP. I'll just say it, the Glock is actually trash, where the USP is godlike. Even against Glock armor buys, the USP one-shots to the head, is silenced, and is free for the CTs. Because a lot of players in Valorant are at the very least familiar with this, players think it's an easy choice between the classic or Ghost. But here's the thing, the classic is better than the CS Glock, and the Ghost is worse than the USP. Neither gun in Valorant is that accurate, and against light armor, the Ghost will not one-tap to the head, which is a major issue in my opinion. What is the point of spending 500 credits, more than a Sage Wall by the way, on a weapon that won't even one-tap? You know who it will one-tap? Other Ghost users, as they can't afford armor. I will say this, there are certainly agents and spots on the maps that a Ghost will be the better choice for. If you know that you're going to be attacking or defending a long-range angle where you can jiggle peek effectively, like say C long on Haven or B main on Split, then its better accuracy at range will really help you. This should only really be done though when you're playing an agent that wouldn't benefit from a utility armor buy more. Sage, for example, shouldn't be buying a Ghost in almost any situation. Since her ability cost adjustment, she can't afford a wall and a Ghost. You should always be buying utility with her, it's simply too good to turn down with slows and wall, easily outstripping the value of a slightly improved gun. Likewise, Cypher traps and cages are much more likely to win a pistol than a gun that can't one-tap versus armor. To explore this idea further, let's move on. Utility versus weapons. There is another key difference between CS and Valorant, and that's the fact that when you buy utility, even if you die and it goes unused, you don't lose it in this game. Whereas you would in CS, and even worse, your enemies could pick up grenades from your body if you died without using them. This is way more impactful than players have internalized properly yet, and is the basis for my next thought. In a lot of scenarios, utility is better than a Ghost. 500 credits is a lot to spend on something that is much less likely to win a round compared to say a Sage Wall or Brim Smokes and Molly, Cypher Traps, etc. And the investment is never wasted. Say you buy utility, say you get destroyed in pistol anyway and die before being able to use it. I would argue you've been standing in utterly the wrong place, but it can happen. That money you spent isn't down the drain. Even if you full save after a pistol loss, your third round buy looks much better already, and if you want to try and make a force play second round, having that unused utility from round 1 makes making plays much more viable. You cannot say the same for buying a Ghost. You die, you lose it, and because tagging is so ridiculously strong in this game, it's very easy to die to a bunch of rushing classics. Death by 1,000 cuts. If you peek a bunch of classic users and one of them tags you, that can be all she wrote. Hands up who's been running sprayed across the map by a classic from miles away. Yeah, that's just about everybody. It happens way more than it would in CS. The tagging actually makes the slippery jiggle peek long range playstyle of a USP or Ghost much less effective in general in the game. It's partly the reason why the angles you can hold are totally different in Valorant. That is a deeper conversation for another time, but for this video, all you need to really understand is that the Ghost is not as advantageous as you might think it is. For some really key agents, full utility or utility and armor is the better bet. The cases this is not true is when an agent's utility is either very cheap or if it's a bit more direct. The duelists, for example, don't have the absolute killer anti-rush abilities of Sage and Brim. Phoenix is an interesting case study, particularly on defense. How useful is his short-range flash in that scenario? It can be good, but part of what makes that agent weak on defense in general is the fact that he has to be in such close proximity to danger to use it properly. This is also the exact range where being overwhelmed by classics is a very real possibility. On attack, it's different, obviously. There, if he plays the right way, he can be the player doing the tagging or killing post-flash, but when defending, he'll want to stay alive as long as possible and kite away, saving his flash for retake where it's much more useful. In that scenario, a ghost isn't a terrible option for him. Jett, likewise, doesn't really have defensive abilities at her disposal in terms of slowing or blocking other players. What she does have is escape options for kiting away and blocking line of sight on her for a refrag, and her utility isn't that expensive that a ghost is prohibitive. Her dash is one of the only tools in the game that can actually ignore tagging to a large extent, so she can play at range, jiggle spot for info, and escape with her life. Because of this, she's a good candidate for raid bossing. What is that, you ask? Well, raid bossing is where you upgrade a teammate with an improved weapon so that they can buy armor and utility and have a better gun at the cost of your own loadout. Phoenix is a raid boss candidate on attack because he has short range impact utility, and if he has more health and a better weapon, he can do that entry job better, especially if that player is strong with pistols. In CS, when the Tech 9 was outrageous, the entry player would quite often get raid bossed so that they could impersonate a plow going through a site. This tactic is a lot rarer in Valorant, being unheard of until very high ranks, but it's something you might want to consider if you're playing in a group of friends. For me, the basic rule is, the better your agent's utility, the more you should lean into that, versus a weapon that doesn't offer as much of an upgrade on a classic as players think it will. I play Brimstone and I always buy 3 smokes. Sometimes I choose a ghost over a molly in combo with that, depending on the range of the spot I'm playing, but that is becoming rarer the more I play. With Breach, I buy 2 flashes and armor on both sides of the map. The power level of the best utility already dictates the game to a huge extent, even in full buy rounds. In Pistol, it can be even stronger, and a lot of players ignore that. To change tack here a little bit, to be perfectly honest, I dislike Valorant pistol rounds quite a lot. They're nowhere near as satisfying as CS in my opinion. That's largely because the Ghost is weaker in this context than a free weapon is on defense in that game. If Riot tuned the Ghost so that it could one-tap light armor opponents, then I'd really find it harder to recommend not using it in more scenarios. But as it is, it just doesn't offer as much power as cheaper utility options. Plus, with tagging and the classic being better than the CS Glock, I think the right choices are virtually made for you. Some of you might say, if the Ghost could one-tap light armor, that would be problematic in other contexts of the game, but I don't think that's true. If you don't buy Kevlar and a helmet in CS, you do die to a USP headshot, and in full buy rounds when your opponents have AKs, CTs don't bother buying headshot armor anyway, because being hit with an AK in the head is a one-tap anyway. This is all academic, I know, but for a round that can really define a match depending on whether you win or lose both, it's really the only time that I feel that Agent's abilities definitely overshadow the FPS elements of the game instead of complementing them. This is just my opinion though. I'd be really excited to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. And that's about it for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video and found the info useful. If you like the content on this channel, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you get notified when we upload. Until next time.